В результате ранее
As a result of destructive steps by Western countries,
разрушительных шагов
the foundation of constructive relations and practical cooperation between nuclear-armed states has been significantly undermined.
обладающими
The basis for dialogue in relevant bilateral and multilateral formats has been destabilized.
ведения диалога
Step by step, the system of Soviet American and Russian American agreements on the control of nuclear missiles and strategic defensive weapons has been almost completely dismantled.
соглашений по
We link the numerous problems that have accumulated in the strategic sphere
контрольными вооружениями.
since the beginning of the 22nd century to the West's destructive actions.
В политической сфере
Its destabilizing doctrinal concepts and military technical programs aimed at undermining global parity and at achieving or attempting to achieve absolute and overwhelming superiority.
глобального
There should be no doubt that Russia is capable of responding to any existing and emerging threats,
ни у кого не должно быть сомнений,
not with words, but with the use of military and technical measures.
возникающие угрозы.
One example is our decision to abandon the unilateral moratorium on the deployment of ground-based intermediate and shorter-range missiles.
Одностороннего моратория
This was a step forced by the need to adequately respond to programs for the deployment of similar weapons of American and other Western origin in Europe and the Asia-Pacific region,
по размещению в Европе и
which directly threaten Russia's security.
аналогичных вооружений американских
We are confident in the reliability and effectiveness of our national deterrence forces.
мы уверены,
At the same time, we are not interested in further escalating tensions or fueling an arms race.
заинтересованы в
Let me remind you that the last significant political and diplomatic achievement
вооружении.
in the area of strategic stability was the signing of the Russian-American Strategic Offensive Arms Treaty, New START, in 2010. However, due to the extremely hostile policy of the Biden administration, which violated the fundamental principles on which the treaty was based, its full-scale implementation was suspended in 2023. Nevertheless, both sides have declared their intention to voluntarily continue observing the central quantitative limits under the Strategic Offensive Arms Treaty until the end of its life cycle. So, for nearly 15 years, this agreement has continued to play a significant and positive role in maintaining the balance of power and clarity in the area of strategic offensive arms. The New START Treaty is set to expire on February 5, 2026. A complete rejection of the legacy of this agreement would be, in many respects, a mistaken and short-sighted step, which, in our view, would also negatively affect the achievement of the goals of the treaty on the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons. To avoid provoking a further strategic arms race, and to ensure an acceptable level of predictability and restraint, we consider it justified to attempt to preserve the status quo established by the New START Treaty during this rather turbulent period. Therefore, after February 5, 2026, Russia is prepared to continue adhering to the central quantitative limits of the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty for 1 year. Going forward, based on an analysis of the situation, we will make a decision if we continue adhering to these voluntary self-limitations. We believe this measure will only be viable if the United States acts in a similar manner. Special attention must also be paid to the plans for expanding the strategic components of the U.S. missile defense system, including preparations for deploying interceptors in space. We think that implementation of such destabilizing actions could nullify our efforts to maintain the status quo in the area of strategic arms. We will respond accordingly. I believe the implementation of the Russian initiative could contribute to creating an atmosphere suitable for a substantive strategic dialogue with the United States of America. Naturally, this would require conditions for its full-scale resumption and take into account the entire range of efforts aimed at normalizing bilateral relations and resolving fundamental security contradictions.